Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, my name is Dami and I am a licensed architect in beautiful Vancouver, BC. And today we're doing something different. For the first time ever on this channel, we're doing a little Q&A to mark the 50,000 subscriber milestone. Woohoo! Before we start, I should say, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting me and the channel. And thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your concerns. And it's been a really fun and rewarding process. Hopefully I can continue to make videos that you guys find helpful and interesting. Let's just dive right in. Why did you become a video creator and start your YouTube channel? It was obviously to provide tools and strategies for young architects to have more fulfilling and meaningful careers in architecture. But I think this question wants me to go a little deeper. And I think it's really asking me about my personal, selfish reasons for starting a YouTube channel. I've always been really interested in content creation and sharing of ideas and different communication methods for architects. And I always thought it was a real shame that architects just share the pretty pictures and we only share the finished product and we never really share the process, which is what you're paying for when you're hiring an architect. I think I've always had a kind of entrepreneurial mindset, and I've been interested in starting my own business or a side hustle, but I have also worked at small firms. I see a lot of problems with the conventional architecture business model. I think some people can run it very successfully, but I'm personally not interested in starting a conventional architecture firm. Having a YouTube channel has been super interesting for me because, especially on that front, because although I'm not really properly monetizing my YouTube channel right now, there is the monetary value that I could tap into if I wanted to, and that could supplement traditional architecture firm. It's actually introduced me to some really cool clients without having me go and seek them out. And so with this, I think I would be much more open to the idea of starting my own firm. I think the more interesting question is, how did I start the YouTube channel? And it is an interesting story that I have shared on this channel before. In March of 2020, I ended up leaving my job when I got my architecture license. I just wanted a fresh start. I had been at the firm for 3.5 years and my bosses were amazing. They really helped me through the whole process. But yeah, I just wanted a different scene and I also wanted a little break. I booked a little trip to Mexico and I've always wanted to go on a yoga retreat. I booked a yoga retreat, super excited, but that's also when COVID hit. That was pretty scary. The markets just plummeted. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody was hiring. And I thought that I had made the worst mistake ever because I'm a planner. Having that kind of uncertainty, especially right after I kind of reached my goal that I'd been working towards for almost a decade, that was very scary and frustrating. It was a very anxious time in my life. During that time, I had a lot of free time and I spent a lot of time on Reddit and on YouTube because I was spending a lot of time on architecture forums on Reddit. One of the things that I noticed is that there's a lot of negativity in architecture. A 14-year-old kid would be asking oh, hello, I want to be an architect. But I don't know anything about it. Can you tell me? You would get these angry architects being never go into architecture. You only go into it if you plan on working for 80-hour weeks and never seeing your family and never sleeping. That made me feel very annoyed because that is just really one small side of the story. I think a lot of people say those things thinking that they're protecting young people, but what they really should be doing is trying to change the industry from within instead of like ruining young people's dreams. That was just something that I was kind of like in the back of my mind. At the same time, I was trying to suppress my anxieties. No, I was trying to control my anxieties, not suppress. And so I was doing a lot of like sketching and designing. And then I came across a video on YouTube by Ali Abdal where he was like talking about, oh, how I made all of this passive income through YouTube. That kind of lit a light bulb in my head. And I was like, well, why don't I just try to record my design process? And so that was my first video where I recorded the process of me like turning anxiety into an architectural experience. If you're interested, I'll leave it right here. Okay, next question. Just got an internship opportunity, but I feel like I'm not actually qualified. Do you deal with imposter syndrome at all? Yes. And until very recently, I had imposter syndrome like all the time and didn't know when I would stop feeling like this. Like some people just seem to have this confidence as soon as they come out of school, but I was definitely not like this. Yeah, like I felt like I was this blind person walking around in the dark for a very long time. Especially whenever I would talk to engineers, I was very scared of asking the wrong questions because I was afraid that they were going to find out that I didn't know anything. Yeah, like trust me, when I say this, you will get to a point where you feel more confident. When you do something once, you're kind of like, okay, that's what it's like. And you don't really feel scared about it anymore. When I went through a project once, that whole process was terrifying. On my second project, like I kind of knew what to expect and it was actually a lot easier. Every project you go through, it gets a little bit easier and you get a little bit more confident. Well, for me, like one of the areas I felt super imposter syndrome-y about was, like talking to different consultants and contractors. Yeah, because I was afraid that they were gonna find out that I was a fraud and judge me and look down on me for not knowing things. Actually, what I realized is that they don't expect you to know everything. And usually they're super good about explaining things to you. In fact, some of them love explaining things to you. Mechanical engineers love talking about toilets. Of course, like to a certain extent, especially if you're a new intern, don't hesitate to ask. Just remember, like if you don't ask something you don't know, like you're never gonna learn. And this stuff, it's honestly just so much easier to just ask and like rip off the band-aid than try to go off on your own and try to figure it out by yourself, because you're gonna spend so many more hours like trying to find the answer by yourself when you can just look stupid for 5 minutes and figure out the answer by asking someone. I find that every time I go through something really tough, afterwards I come out more confident in my abilities. A lot of people on this channel ask me like, oh, is it really worth it to be an architect? Like, it sounds really hard. But for me, I think the internal value that you gain from going through something really hard is priceless. And the confidence that you gain in your life by going through a construction project is huge. You turn this design and you work with all these people, with all these consultants and clients, and you coordinated with all these engineers and contractors, and you friggin' turned it into a building that you can go into. If that doesn't give you confidence, then I don't know what will. And this gives me confidence in so many other areas of my life. For example, starting this YouTube channel. The caveat to this is that there really isn't an easy fix to the imposter syndrome, in my opinion. I think you just have to go through the process. Sometimes you just have to feel stupid for asking stupid questions. Okay, next question. What do you do in your free time on vacation as an architect? Do you like to separate architecture from your other hobbies? Or do you incorporate it in those activities as well? When I'm on vacation, I would say mostly depends on who I'm going with and what the purpose of the vacation is. Again, I'm not gonna force my friends who are not in architecture to go see buildings with me, but I have found that most people, like most non-architects, love traveling with me because I'm able to take them to different buildings and show them a side of the city that they wouldn't have seen before. And I mean, architecture is a pretty big part of my non-working life, and it is a hobby for me. So during my leisure time, or if I'm on vacation, I do like to go and visit buildings. Also, photography and video making is a hobby of mine, so I'm kind of like hitting two birds with one stone. Personally, I think if you want to be a good architect, it's important to visit as many buildings as possible. Photos and drawings, there's a lot of things they can't convey. As an architect, you need to go and experience what it feels like so that it can live in your memory, and like later on, when you're designing, you can kind of pull from those experiences and bring them into your designs. I dropped out of architecture and returned to it at 27 years of age. Is there a thing as an age criterion when firms are hiring? I don't think there's such thing as an improper age. In fact, I would say it would give you an advantage in school being a mature student because you have more life experience and you can bring a different perspective. I think you'll be viewed as more valuable at work because firms generally seem to view mature people as more valuable. In fact, I would go as far as to say, if you have been cursed with a youthful face like mine, try to add a couple wrinkles in your face to look more mature. Or maybe a couple of fake gray hairs. Maybe they'll take you more seriously. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. How do you handle annoying or irritating clients if you're just starting out in the profession? You just complain about them to your coworkers when your clients are not around. Joking. I think it depends on what your level of experience is and what level of annoyance this client is. Honestly, like, unless you're a star architect or you run your own very profitable firm and you have so many people coming to you with work that you have to turn them down, you don't really have the luxury of firing a client. A client can be annoying in a lot of different ways, and I think you just have to weigh the level of annoyingness, and that annoyingness will kind of determine your reaction. But I mean, most clients are not annoying. I personally haven't worked with a client that I found so annoying that I never wanted to work with them again. When you say they're annoying, do you mean they're constantly questioning your design moves? Because that's a valid reason and that's a part of your job. So for example, in the library project that I'm working on right now, every time we make tiny little changes, the librarians, they give us feedback. Sometimes when I'm super swamped, I have like a million things to do, I get like 5 pages of feedback. Feels slightly annoying, but that is my job. Actually, the more feedback you get, the better your project is going to be. The client's going to be happier that you listen to them. Well, I guess this is pretty needy and it's kind of revealing of my personality. Like, if I know that my efforts are actually being appreciated, then that kind of makes things okay for me. For example, the other day we were having a meeting with the librarians and we were revisiting a corner of the library that we'd kind of designed and redesigned. Libraries' requirements just like kept changing, and different people working at different parts of the library had their inputs, and I presented the design once again and they said something like, Also, by the way, we just want to let you know that we really appreciate you being patient with us. And we know we've gone through this process back and forth. And them just saying that made me feel really good. I am a sucker for those compliments. If you find your client annoying because the client is slashing your budget, and I think like anything, you just have to put yourself in their shoes. If you had entrusted someone with millions of dollars, like, wouldn't you make these requests? If you think it's reasonable, then just like try to take the emotion out of it, try to look at it objectively. My question is, what are the points we should focus on while explaining to jury so that they could understand our perspective more easier? Brackets in hierarchy. So I would start with do the why, how, and what. So why, present the problem, like site conditions, client requirements, and then how you're solving the problem, and then the what is your building. And if you're kind of looking for a hierarchical list in terms of like the most convincing how, I would say function is probably your secret weapon as an architect. Function is how you move around, where people gather, your circulation path, your views, all the pragmatic things about a project that clients hire you to solve. And then there's the material. And I think unless there's a very strong functional reason for why your material is the main solution to solve your problem, this should be, second in hierarchy in terms of most convincing, especially if you're doing a school project. I always found like the material as a solution as not very convincing because, when you're in school, you're not really working with manufacturers or actual like reps of the materials, right? I think this should supplement your functional argument, but it should not be the only reason. And then third is form. I've seen architects who design things by eye, and they make design decisions based on their aesthetic preference. But I find this a lot harder to sell to the client. And also, it's a harder sell for your employees or colleagues who have to work on the project. Form should follow function and not the other way around. Fourth in the hierarchy, I would say, is probably like the mood or the feeling. And I would say this is probably the least convincing argument in terms of like providing an actual solution to your conditions for your jury. But, also keep in mind, this is how a lot of designers work. Like they sell the mood and the feeling. And, like, especially with interior design, like clients eat that up. So it really depends on like what kind of audience you're talking to. Could you give me some tips on undergraduate students trying to apply to schools like Ryerson, UBC, and Waterloo, and some tips, some portfolio tips on what the committee really looks for? So if you haven't watched my portfolio video, check that out. You are very lucky, my friend, because I actually sat on the portfolio review committee when I was in my master's, and I spent many days reviewing undergrad portfolios. The portfolios that have had the best feedback are the ones that had really good sketches and drawing. When I say good sketches, like sketches where you can see the thought process and where you can see the person's interpretation of an object or a building or a space. If I could give you one tip right now, I would say try to build your sketching skills. Looks like I have a fangirl. My question is it true that you'll have to sacrifice a lot of things like quality time with your friends and family, self-care, and reading more books and etc.? Yes. But also, not necessarily. When I was in architecture school, I definitely made a lot of sacrifices. I didn't make a lot of time for my non-architecture friends and family. looking back, I was, let's just say I'm really grateful that I have amazing and gracious friends. Every single one of them were super understanding and like nobody really gave me shit for it. That was just like a phase of my life that I had to go through for me. You know, I made friends in architecture school and I was just like really plunged into that world. But I can say that when I started working, I definitely had more time for other things in my life compared to being in architecture school. And, you know, I always try to make time for self-care. Before I go to bed, I have my nightly routine and I try to do things that I really enjoy doing. I make sure to finish working, whether it's like my architecture work or YouTube or emails. I try to make sure to finish the night at 7:30. But yeah, I do wish I had more time for reading. For me, making this YouTube channel actually was a huge time sucker, and I realized I had to reorganize my priorities a lot. I was amazed at how much time I saved by not watching TV every night. What would you suggest for someone who's taken a 4-year-long hiatus from architecture? Edit. I mean, specifically advice for getting back into the field. What to say during interviews, during the gap, what one can do with their outdated portfolio. With the portfolio part, I'll just refer you to my how to create an architecture portfolio video. Try to do competitions or try to do your own projects to fill that up. So actually I've asked a follow-up question to Jessica, who actually took a break from architecture due to mental health reasons. Actually, Jessica, I don't think you are the only one. I think this question is very important. When I was at my old firm, we had this girl come in for an interview. She had all the right kinds of skills, but she had a 3-year-long break. When my boss asked her, she kind of said, "Oh, I just needed some time off." And that was that. When she left, we all thought she had the right kind of qualifications. That kind of raised a lot of questions. My boss said something like she seemed like she was burnt out and she didn't get the job. This is kind of tricky. And I think there's a lot of different ways to approach this. And I think it really depends on how you frame your break and how you present yourself. I'm not saying this to make you nervous. Yeah, I think the way you formulate your answer can either really work to your advantage or it can give off a bad impression. If you really want to go back to work in architecture, you have to frame it in a way that gives you more value. In that sense, it's like how you would reframe any other work experience. You can say things like, I decided to take some time off because I was burnt out of my old job. And I think you can be honest about that. And in fact, I think if the employer doesn't want to hire you because they think burning out means you can't handle the workload, then I don't think you want to work there. Yeah, so maybe you can say like, oh, I took some time off because I was like completely burnt out. But taking these years off and doing other things gave me time and space to pursue other interests. That shows that you're multifaceted and you're flexible. It gave me time to reflect on my relationship with work, and I worked on building healthy habits. So it shows that you're reflective and resilient. Gave me time to reconnect with my passion for architecture, or find new interesting areas in architecture. Shows that you're passionate, you're freshly passionate. What I found is that architects really value life experience. Like, I know an architect who left architecture and worked in film for like 5 years, and he came back and he's now working as a senior architect, even though he only has a couple of years of experience in like actual architecture. Just like try to spin it in a way that gives you more experience. If you were doing something for those 4 years, Maybe it's related to architecture and maybe it's not. Anyway, like I would try to find a way to connect what you were doing during that time to your role. You said you're a fellow Canadian and I don't know like where exactly you are, but like at least here in BC, the job market for young architects is like very, very good. I'm sure you're going to be able to find a place that's going to be able to give you good work-life balance. If the first place that you go to wasn't a great fit, like you can leave. It's a hot market for architects. And there's just like, yeah, there's tons of places that are just begging to fill seats. Yeah, good luck. Any hints on how to be a good interior designer? So I'm not an interior designer, but I have worked as an architect at an interior design firm with other interior designers. I think interior designers have so many skills that we don't have. They're like amazing in their own right. I've actually been wanting to make a video on this, like the difference between architecture and interior design and how that influences the design process. They're very different from the way they come up with ideas to like how we present the ideas. To be a good interior designer, you need to be really good at reading the client. You need to be good at turning something that's very elusive, like feelings and moods and like branding elements and like colors, and turn them into like a material palette and color palette and spatial arrangements. Because they don't have the hard constraints like architecture. They don't have things like zoning or building codes or like site conditions to play with. So they're really just like selling a mood and a feeling. And then, yeah, that would be the other important skill, selling yourself and selling your work. Because if you're convincing the client of a mood or a feeling, you need to be very expressive with your words and not be shy with your words. I have actually decided to split this video into several parts. I wanted to dig into these questions and answers a little bit deeper. And in fact, I did ask you guys whether you would prefer a live or if you would prefer me to like go into these questions deeper, and 88% of you guys answered like a full deep dive video. It's actually pretty late now, so I need to get some sleep. I'm gonna continue this tomorrow. I'll see you in the next video.